So the only point of exceptional beyond the letter of the law virtue in the story, which of course is not a small point, it's a big point, is all those 20 years of him taking care of the chicks that became the whatever, that became the herd of goats, was that he never took any of the money for himself, which he was 100% allowed to. He just took all the money and refunneled it into this lost object. Laws of molesting another person in any way would actually, beyond of course the idea of a forbidden relationship, would also fall under this category of stealing, of being dishonest because you're taking something not yours, you're hurting someone that you obviously have no right to do, you're forcibly taking someone that you have no right to do. So anything in that whole arena is actually found here in the laws of stealing, in the laws of honesty, because that would be considered a theft. It's a version of kidnapping a person, of stealing them, of using them, of abusing them, of harming them. Also, all the laws of finding lost objects are found under this broad heading of don't steal, be honest, because of course, when you find a lost object, it's also a challenge or an opportunity in terms of your honesty, your scrupulous adherence to care, even going beyond the letter of the law in terms of what's really demanded as versus perhaps what we sometimes do that is truly even beyond. When we're looking at these laws, the first foundational idea is if a person takes property of his and puts it outside his farm, outside his field, in the public property, outside his house, what he's in essence doing is saying, this is no longer mine, this is ownerless, you want it, take it. It's interesting because I think we mentioned this idea of nowadays there's this concept of people digging things out of garbage dumps. So from a Torah perspective, if someone puts something in a garbage dump, that's a way of saying it's not mine, it's ownerless. The stores say, no, you can't take stuff out of garbage dumps. We put things in garbage dumps that we don't want people to take. We just need to get rid of them, but they're not ownerless. So that they would have to really make such a statement. We put in the garbage dump and it's not ownerless. Because if they don't make such a statement from a Torah perspective, if you take something and you dump it out, that means you're saying it's not yours anymore. You don't want it anymore. Anyone is allowed to take it. I mean, in my neighborhood, if you put something in your alley, you're hoping someone's going to pick it up and take it, you know? So obviously no one could say, hey, how'd you take that item of mine? Well, it was in your alley. Yeah, so it's still mine. Well, what do you mean? If you put it in the alley, that's understood that whoever wants it, it's up for grabs. So obviously this goes with the culture of your community, of your neighborhood, of your city, of your town. Like what is acceptable there? I think I remember Dixie was saying she thought something they were trying to throw out, and then she tried to help them throw it out and she got in trouble because they weren't meaning to throw it out, but that's what it looked like to her. But from a Torah perspective, you take it off of your property, if you put it in a garbage area, if you put it in a public area, you are saying, this isn't mine, whoever wants it, you're welcome to it. Do what you want. So if that happens and you find something like that, how do you lay claim to it? How do you say, yeah, it's mine, I want this item? So if it's something that's movable, when you pick it up and move it, or even if you don't pick it up, you drag it a certain amount of distance, you're saying, now it's mine. Whoever was the owner said they're not interested, I'm picking it up, I'm dragging it, I'm picking it up, I'm taking it. This, according to Torah, will be my way of claiming ownership to this item. If someone abandoned something that's landed, not something movable, like they walked away from their home, they walked away from their farm, well, how do you show ownership? You can't move it. You can't pick it up and move it. So how do you show ownership? So the Torah would say by an act that's a manifestation of ownership. In other words, doing any positive, beneficial action on this land or on this estate or in this home. If you put up a fence, if there was a fence that needed an opening and you opened the fence, if you did something on the property that someone who owns the property would do to take care of the property, that's your statement of ownership. And then from a Torah perspective, it's yours. Whoever it was walked away from it. It's now ownerless. You walked on it. You built fences around it. It's yours. Torah says it's yours. It's honest. It's yours. Now, obviously, we follow the laws of the land. So if in the area where you live, there's other legalities you have to do to acquire it, so then according to Torah, you have to follow those legalities, because we're not negating the law of the land. But from a Torah perspective, if someone walks away from like a property, like a house, like a farm, and you come on it and do things to fix it up, from a Torah perspective, it's yours. You acquired it. Obviously,
Now,
Dixie?
can I Okay, so you're saying that if somebody found an abandoned house or farm and you fix it up, it's yours?
According to Torah, if there was an abandoned farm, an abandoned house, the owners left it. They left it for whatever reason. They walked away from it. It's
But
abandoned.
how would you know it was totally abandoned? I mean, surely tax records or something might show that it's not abandoned.
So that will be an interesting question. But if we're thinking in ancient terms and older than our 21st century terms, if you come to an area and it looks abandoned, like you can see people haven't been here for a long time, it looks like whoever it was just couldn't make a living here, couldn't make a living off this farm, couldn't make a living off this house. They had to run away and flee for whatever reason, and they left it, and you come in and take it over and make improvements. Torah's saying it's yours. Now you're right, and this is a point I just said. If the government says, wait, due protocol by us is da 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 da, so you've got to follow the government's protocol. You can't say, I'm a Noahide, this is what Noahide law says, go fly a kite. No, you definitely have to follow the law of the land, whatever other layers the law of the land might require. But from Torah's perspective, if someone else abandons it and you come and take ownership by improving it, it's yours. Now let's say two people see an item on the road. Now again, we're talking here about things that were abandoned, not were lost. So that could be a question. How do I know? But like let's say in my neighborhood, if you're in an alley, because people put things they don't want out in their alleys in the neighborhood where I live in Chicago. So you and somebody else are walking the alley and you both spy something that looks very appealing outside someone's house. The assumption is the owner's trying to get rid of it. They put it in their alley. You know, you see a high chair, you see a whatever, a dresser, you see a chair. You can't say, I want it, I see it first, it's mine. According to Torah law, those words are meaningless. Those don't do anything. If it's movable, you have to get there first, you have to pick it up and move it, or you have to drag it and move it. That is how you acquire ownership. And we're saying if it's something that you can't move, like a house, like land, you have to do something constructive on the property to express ownership. So Torah doesn't allow you to say, I saw it first. I said it's mine first. That doesn't count. But picking it up and moving it does count. That's considered a form of acquiring ownership. And again, if the laws of the land say something else, you have to follow them as well. But from a Torah perspective, this is what you have to do. Here we're talking again about things that are ownerless, that the owner doesn't want them. Now, from a Torah perspective, public property, so to speak, is ownerless, meaning a desert, a forest, a river, a lake, an ocean. Who owns this? These are God's, nature, which would mean, from a Torah perspective, you're allowed to go hunting, you're allowed to go fishing, you're allowed to chop down wood. From a Torah perspective, it's nobody's. It's God's land. It's not owned by any person, so it's open for anyone to use, to benefit from. So that would be what Torah would say about it. Now, we could say, yeah, but that forest is in America. That lake, that's America, that's American land. So someone does own it. The American government owns it. Torah would say, okay, that's valid. Again, in ancient times, the world didn't work that way. And a forest, cut down the trees, it's nobody's trees. You're trapping animals, they're nobody's animals. You're fishing in the lake, there's nobody's fish. So you're allowed to take them, and you're not being dishonest. You're not stealing from anyone. They're for the taking. They're God's gift to the world. But nowadays, we would say, wait, no, this is American property. So then you say, okay, so what does the American government say? If the American government says you are not allowed to trap animals here, so you're not allowed to. And that will be stealing. Even if there's nobody watching, and even if, of course, everyone does, and there's no guards, and you're never going to get in trouble, and we're saying, oh, these are public areas, and you're free to take them. But if the government regulates this land and they created rules, no fishing in this lake, no chopping wood from these trees, no trapping animals in this preserve, in this forest, so you're not allowed to do any of that. Because again, we have to honor the laws of the country. And because then we're saying there is an owner. The government is the owner. If you want to go back to earlier times, the king, it's the king's land. And whatever he declares, you have to follow as an honest, God-fearing person. But if there's no laws about it one way or another, like from God's perspective, so to speak, if man didn't get involved and start regulating anything, you're allowed to trap the animals, you're allowed to chop the wood, you're allowed to fish the fish. It's God's land. It's God's world, and he put many things in it to benefit man, and you can benefit from it. And that's totally honest, and there's no problem at all. But if the government regulates, you got to follow the government regulations. Now, what we were saying until now was a situation where we're assuming something is ownerless. So Dixie said, how do you know if it's ownerless? How do you know, is it lost or is it abandoned? Or like she said, if you go into the house, how do you know that they just haven't temporarily been traveling for the last 3 months? How do you know? Maybe that's what's happening. They forgot to put locks on. Somebody busted their locks. They're planning on coming back. So that's obviously something you have to ascertain. You can't just say, oh, it's empty. Yeah, it's ownerless. So if you find something in public property, not in the alley behind someone's house, which is an area, I'm just giving the area in my neighborhood, that would be sort of designated for people that are getting rid of property, or by a garbage dump that we would assume is an area where people are going to get rid of things. But if you found something on a street and it looks like it could be someone's, like it has value, do you view it as ownerless or do you view it as lost? What do you think? Find on a street corner $1, a wallet, a ring, a bus card, a bag of chips. Do you view them as lost? Do you view them as abandoned?
Lost.
Lost. Danielle says lost. Any other votes on this?
Lost.
Lost?
Yeah, lost.
Lost.
Lost. All right, we're unanimous. We all think it's lost, and yes, I agree. Because here, the plausibility is someone dropped it. It fell out of a bag. I mean, we've all had these experiences. Like, we all know these things happen. They happen to us. They happen to people we know. They happen to many, many people. So, is it possible someone abandoned it and dropped it in public property? Of course it's possible. It might be ownerless. It might be abandoned. But the more likely logical supposition is it's lost. So if you're walking down a street and in front of someone's house you see an old, well, again, I don't know if in front of someone's house, behind someone's house, in my neighborhood, maybe another neighbor's in front of someone's house, you see an old carriage, a baby swing, like you see things you could say, oh, they probably don't need these anymore, so they're just putting it out for someone to take them. And if you're not sure, of course, you could ask. But if you find in the middle of a public thoroughfare, just, a whatever, the assumption is it's lost. It dropped out of their bag had a hole, it dropped out of their pocket had a hole. Like, these things happen, they happen to us all the time. You got distracted, someone was pulling at her, something fell, she didn't notice, she didn't realize. So when you find something in that public area, the assumption is it's lost. Now that we all agree that it's lost, are you allowed to keep a lost object or not? What do you think? So it's lost. Found a gold ring. Clearly, somebody probably wants it.
No,
lost.
you cannot keep it.
And he also says you cannot keep it.
You have to find the owner.
You have to find the owner.
Are you right?
Any other thought?
I would say you have to try and find it. But if it's impossible to find it, I would think then you could keep it.
What would make it impossible, Dixie?
Well, say you're traveling, no, not traveling, but say there was a bunch of people here and they lost their ring, and you've tried and you contacted everybody that was here and said, you've got this ring. In fact, this did happen. We found a ring that was a diamond ring at a barrel race, and we never could find the owner. It's still sitting here. Or it was. I don't think it's anymore. I think it's been misplaced, but everybody we asked was, is this yours? No. So we never could find the owner to it.
So you're saying, Dixie, in that situation with the ring, do you feel you were allowed to use it, or you can't find the owner, but you still have to wait for that owner to show up, so you can't use it? Like, do you have an obligation to wait for the owner? Maybe they're going to one day remember they lost it in your house. Or can you use it because you have no way of finding the owner?
Well, I wouldn't want to use it, but I guess if somebody wanted to, maybe they could wear it. I don't know.
What do you think, Robin?
That's something I don't.
Say the question again.
If you found a $10 bill on the floor, if you found a $10 bill for that matter in your house, if you found a ring, if you found a watch, if you found a phone, do you have an obligation to return it? Are you allowed to keep it? What do you think?
Well, if I know the people who were here, I have an obligation to return it and find out who it belongs to. And
on a street corner.
If it's on a street corner, that's it. Some people would take whatever they found, or you might take it to the police station and say you found it where you found it, and hope people would come and look for it.
Okay. So we see this gamut of answers of Danielle, you absolutely have to find the owner, to Dixie saying you try, but if you can't find them and you want to use it, whatever, to Robin saying it depends like how moral you're going to be, and if you really can't find the owner, give it to the police. All of what you said makes perfect sense. There's a law, and then there's being even more careful. According to the law, and this is why we began by explaining the concept of something ownerless, where something is truly ownerless, you are totally allowed to take it, as we explained how you take it, not by saying, hey, that's mine, but by picking it up and moving it or dragging it or, making some improvement on it, like on a land or a house. If you find something in public property, let's move to public property instead of your house, just to understand the concept, and then you can explain in your house as well. If you find something in public property, question is this now ownerless? Meaning, has the owner given up on this or not? Ownerless, we said, was like the owner says, I don't want this anymore, and he puts it in his alley. But ownerless could also be, and this is a very, very significant concept, which also had to do with stolen items that we sort of touched on, but I don't know how much we delved in this direction. It's a legally significant concept, both things stolen and things found lost. Does the owner despair of getting it back? If we can be certain that the owner has despaired of getting it back, then it's ownerless. He gave up on it. He's like, I'll never see that again. Once he's saying he'll never see that again, it's the same thing like him putting it in his alley. It's not mine anymore. If it's not his anymore, then you totally ought to keep it. How do we know if an owner, who clearly we don't know who he is, because if we knew who he is, of course we'd return it, and of course we have an obligation to return it. But we don't know who he is. So obviously if you find something, the first thing you would do is look to see if there's any identification marks. So if you find a phone, oh, okay, well a phone, maybe you open up the phone and see if it says mom or something, and you call, and that happened actually once in the city of New York to my daughter. It was very bizarre. Of course, the thing is how they even get to open your phone, because most phones are locked. But my daughter, it was not an expensive phone at all, but she lost her phone. And I think even before she realized she lost it, I got this very weird call from my brother-in-law that someone in New York had contacted my brother-in-law saying he had this phone. And I don't remember how they knew it was my daughter's, because the phone was locked. But how did they get, of all people, my brother-in-law's number? Because my brother-in-law had sent, I think it was like a group WhatsApp. So he had responded or put something on the group. And you have like notifications on the top of your screen, even when the screen is locked, or at least she did, even though her screen was locked. So the person saw the notification with my brother-in-law's number, and based on that called, and based on that, we figured out, she gave us her number, and my daughter walked, however far it was from where she lived, 20 minutes, a half an hour away, and she got her phone back. So that person did 100% what you're supposed to do. That was a very righteous act. Sure, I called and thanked the person. I don't remember, it was quite a number of years ago, but it was a very righteous act from a complete stranger, from a non-Jew who I doubt ever learned the Noahide laws, but just a moral good person understood this is what you do. I had this once with my own cell phone many years ago. It's probably before the days when phones were even locked. I got a call, I got some of I don't remember how they contacted me because they had my phone, saying I have your cell phone. I'm like, you have my cell phone? Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, I didn't even know it was missing. It had dropped out of my whatever, hand, pocketbook, and they found it, and somehow, I don't know, I guess they managed to open it up, or they saw the contacts, or figured out it was mine, they called me. Obviously, that is what you're supposed to do. If you find something, you're supposed to try to figure out who the owner is. Put up signs. If you find it in your house, like Dixie found a diamond ring in her house, she called everyone that was at her house to ask them. That's 100% what you have to do. That's not being a extra nice person. That's not being like, wow, we're so proud of you. That's so impressive that you went way beyond the law. No, that's the law. I shared last week that I had, for years, had a gold necklace that was found in my house, like heavy gold, valuable. And I called everyone. I reached out to everyone I could think of that could be in my house with such jewelry. None of them claimed it. And it was probably a good 10 years later when I realized it was fake. So I still don't know who it is, but I know at least it wasn't a very valuable item that someone lost. If it was fake, it might have been one of my daughters. Who knows? But for years, I guarded it. It's a very valuable necklace that I don't know whose it is, but it's not mine. So is that always what you do? No, we said it depends. It depends on if you can determine this owner, who you don't know who he is, despaired of getting it back. So if you have a way of tracking them down, like it's a cell phone, if it's in your house. I remember hearing once about someone that found a camera. In those days, cameras had rolls of film. So to find the owner of the camera, they developed the film. And from the pictures, they tried to figure out whose camera it was. And it took them quite a while, but actually eventually they did. So definitely, if there's any way of ascertaining the owner, you have an obligation to do that. You have an obligation to return it. Second situation is you have no clue of the owner. You found it on the corner of a busy street. It was not in your house, was not in your backyard. It's not like, oh yeah, one of my friends or neighbors. It was not in your synagogue. It's not one of the people that go to my synagogue. You have no clue what it is. But there are defining signs of this item. Dixie spoke about a diamond ring. A diamond ring has a lot of defining signs. Many things have defining signs. if there are defining signs, we can assume that the owner did not give up hope. Because someone might find it and they might be an honest person and they might post up some signs, and then I can prove it's mine because I'll give them the signs. I remember my daughter found a ring or a bracelet or something in New York, in a religious area of New York, in Crown Heights, in Brooklyn. And that's what she did. I told her, in the area where you found it, post up some signs. If anyone lost, let's pretend it was a watch. I don't think it was a watch. It was either a bracelet or a ring or something like that. Let's say, if anyone lost a watch, please call. And she left her number. And she did get a few calls. And then when they call, ask them to describe it. And if they describe the watch that you found, that means they're the owner, and give it back to them. So if there are defining signs, we can think maybe the owner didn't give up hope, because there's a way to prove it's theirs. There's a famous story in the Talmud of someone who, sort of funny, but in his yard, like wandering into his yards, were like a few little chicks with maybe some string on them or something. So there's a definition. There's a number of chicks, and they had some, I don't remember, a string or something on them that an owner could say what they had. Okay, what is he supposed to do with the chicks? So he took the chicks and he took care of them, and then they had eggs, and then he sold the eggs, and then from selling the eggs and from the chicks he bought us something else, and from the something else he bought us something else, and eventually, fast forward 20 years later, he has like a whole herd of goats that came from these chicks. And some 20 years later, somebody's walking by his area and says, I think this is where we lost our chicks 20 years ago. Let's ask the guy. I don't know what they were thinking, but they came and they said, we lost some chicks here. Like, I think it was like 20 years ago. And he's like, really? Can you describe them? They're like, yeah, there were 3 of them and they had this red, whatever. I'm making it up. I don't remember what the sign was. He said, yes, I did find them. Here, let me show you your chicks. They had like 3 chicks, and he comes out and he shows them a whole herd of goats. They're like, what? How did our chicks become a herd of goats? 20 years of taking care of them and tending them and selling what they make, and then buying and selling and buying and selling. Here, take your goats. These are yours. Was he going beyond the letter of the law? The only way and if I gave you more details, the story is even more incredible. I'm not taking the time. The only part of the story is going beyond the letter of the law is not taking the money himself for the care of the animals. Meaning, if you find chicks, you have to take care of the chicks. You're feeding the chicks. You're giving them water. You're cleaning them. You're this, you're that. So the law is, in that case, if you find something that requires work or requires upkeep, if it can have a value, then use it for its rent it out for its value, and the money you receive you can use for the upkeep. If it doesn't have any value, it just costs you money, but it doesn't produce anything, then sell it. Put the money on the side, and if the owner comes, give them the money. So like the chicks have a value because they produce eggs, and you could sell the eggs. So that could barter the cost of tending these chicks. The goats produce milk. You can sell the milk. That could barter the cost of tending the goats. But if you found a cat or a dog that's not producing anything but costs for upkeep, then we're told wait 30 days. If after 30 days no owner comes, sell it. Money aside, it's not your money. And if somebody comes describing their cat or their dog, I'm just giving that. Maybe you can do something with a cat or dog, rent it out as a mouse or whatever. But if you can't, say, here's your cat, here's your dog, here's the money. I couldn't keep it because you would owe me for upkeep. So instead I sold it, and here's the money, it's yours. So the only point of exceptional beyond the letter of the law virtue in this story, which of course is not a small point, it's a big point, is all those 20 years of him taking care of the chicks that became the whatever, that became the herd of goats, was that he never took any of the money for himself, which he was 100% allowed to. He just took all the money and refunneled it into this lost object. But in terms of the essence fact that 20 years ago you lost 3 chicks and now you're coming and thinking about it, absolutely. Because the owner never despaired. Truth, he never despaired. 20 years later, he asked about it. So that's why when we find something, as I discussed last week with Danielle with her story of the coat that mysteriously was in her husband's car, or the green umbrella in my house that might be hers, if there's signs, if there's some way for the owner to describe it, you have no clue if the owner despaired. Because he could describe it. He could say, I remember 5 years later I lost on this street corner, my whatever. Let me see. Now, I'm not usually in this neck of the woods, but now I'm back in this town. Let me see if there's any signs about what I lost 5 years ago or a year ago, whatever. Oh, I remember when I was in Chicago, I left something, I lost something, I stayed by that family. Oh, Turin. I'm never in Chicago. I don't have their phone number. Now I'm back in Chicago. Let me ask Turins if they ever found in their house this green umbrella that I've been thinking about off and on for the past 5 years. How do I know? So as long as there's a way to describe it, as long as it has what our sages call signs, we can never assume despair. Maybe the owner despaired. Maybe he didn't. If someone, for example, if someone was on a boat and was admiring a beautiful ring and it slipped from his fingers and fell into the ocean, and you buy a fish in the fish market, and when you cut open the fish, there's a ring in its stomach, or you're by the beach and you see as the water washes in, this ring comes in, despair. Even though there's signs, we would say despair. That owner, obviously, in the fish's belly or on the sand, obviously someone lost it in the ocean. Person despaired of it. He has no thought that he's going to track down his ring or whatever it was. So you have to think contextually, could there be any plausibility of the owner hoping? But as long as there's hope, you have an obligation to try to return it, which would mean post up signs and see what happens. It's not yours. But if there are no signs, like you're walking on the street of Chicago and you look down and you see a $20 bill, we would view that as no signs. Money like that, generally we think it has no signs. If you found a wallet with a 20 and 2 10s and a 5, that's signs. There's obviously describing the wallet, and they're saying, I had a 20 bill and I had 2 10s and I had a 5. And if you found a plastic bag with a 20 and 2 10s and a 5, we could say that's signs. He could say exactly the denominations that he lost. I said one of the many things over the years that have been lost in my house was someone left an envelope with money. It was a bank envelope from, I don't know, a bank I don't go to, maybe like Bank of America or something, and it has cash there. It's signs. You're going to come 30 years later and say, I think in your house I had a bank. What bank was it? Bank of America, and this was the bills in it? It's yours. It's signs. But if it's just a $20 bill on the street corner, there's no signs. And therefore, there's no concept of being, I'm going to be more righteous and I'm going to hold this $20 bill and think maybe someday someone's going to find it. You can say, well, why not? You could post up a sign if you lost, you don't want to say what it is because you don't want to give it. If you lost something, customer said no. Not from your end, from the owner's end. The owner's not going to have any hope of ever finding it because he knows there's no way of describing it. He knows he has no signs. So as such, he despaired. Once he despairs, it becomes considered ownerless. Like we discussed in the beginning, if something's ownerless, it's yours to take. It's anyone's to take. It's ownerless. Once an owner despairs, it's ownerless. Once it's ownerless, you have full ability to take it, no problem at all. Any questions on this or any different experiences or how you would view it differently or things you've happened in your life through these concepts?
When I usually find money, and I know I can't find the owner, I give it to charity.
I knew you were going to say that. That is a very virtuous thing to do, and that is a very, very good, appropriate thing to do when you find money. It's not required. I knew as soon as Dixie started saying, I knew she was going to say she finds money and she gives it to charity. I know Dixie. That's a very virtuous thing to do, and it makes a lot of sense. It's not required by the law. The law does not require that. But just like that man, that great sage that I said in the Talmud is described this whole long story, he wasn't required to put all the money back into the animals. He could have taken for his own care, tending, feed, water. He chose to go beyond the law in a very, very pious way. So if you have a custom, whenever you find money, there's no way to returning it, putting in a charity box, that's a very pious, good thing to do.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
What if you find something like right beside someone's car? Let's say, you're on a walk or something and it's not like your neighborhood or something. And you see like a $20 bill, let's just say, right beside someone's driver's side door. It's pretty obvious that most likely they dropped it when they were getting out of their car. Well, let's just say you knock on the door, they don't answer the door. Should you leave it there because there's a high chance they're going to find it. They come out to their car or whatever, but it could be a car from 3 houses down, not directly across. So what's the best thing to
I
do?
would think the best thing to do in that situation is leave a note on the car. I found
Uh-huh.
something outside your car. If you lost something, please call me and let me know what it was. It's very hard to know these things. I had once a situation, sort of a weird story, but I would like took off the AirPods, put them in the case, and then like I think got in the car and I can't find it. Whatever, okay, I don't need it anyway in the car. And I was going back and I searched through my pocket more carefully as I was driving. I'm like, where is the case? And as I was approaching my house, it looked to me like I saw a person bending down and picking something up. And I'm like, he has my AirPods. I was like 100% sure he has my AirPods. When I parked, he was like half a block. He was still in my block. And I was like, hello. I called out to him, but he ignored me. He kept walking. And I searched on the ground. I found the AirPods and I couldn't find the case. The AirPod case dropped. The AirPods probably fell out. And the guy walked by. He saw the AirPod case. And he just picked it up. And he didn't realize that, it's still an AirPod case. It's still helpful. It's right in front of my house. But, he just kept moving. You could say an AirPod case is something that has signs, is not. Could he, if he was an honest person, could he have put up a sign there, found something? If you lost something in this area, call me. Yeah, that would have been a very honest, nice thing to do. And I would have called him right away and he was half a block away. But he didn't do that. And many stories of finding things, many stories of losing things. It happens all the time in our lives. And every time we find something, it's an opportunity to say, well, how am I supposed to behave in this situation? So definitely in Danielle's situation, I would not leave the $20 there. Why not? Because I wouldn't trust that the owner gets it and maybe a dishonest person's going to, not dishonest, maybe anyone's going to take it. Or as you're saying, how do you know if that is the owner? So I would think the safest thing is to write a note. Leave a note in that area, even leave a note on the car. I have once, you're talking about things on cars. I was with my mother together in New York and we had gone to a family event. And at the end of the event, she's like, I can't find my phone. It's your phone, it's your contacts, it's your whole life is on your phone. And we're searching and searching the place. It's not there. I'm like, Ma, maybe you left it in the car. We go back to her car. It's not in her car. I'm searching the ground around her car. I'm searching and searching and searching the ground around her car. It's nowhere. And I felt so bad. My mother's elderly. For her to lose her phone, it would be so much stress. It would be such a hassle. After so much time, I'm just literally praying to God as I'm searching, and now finding under her car in the area around. I go into the stores. This was on a block of stores. Did anyone find a phone and turn it in? Nobody. I went through a few stores there. Finally see. It must have fallen when we opened the door. It must have fallen. It must have fallen right outside the car. And someone picked it up and put it on the hood of the car. The cell phone was black. Is a black car. So it took us it was hand of God that I saw it. We would have just driven away. I would have driven away. The cell phone would have fallen off the hood. I would never have seen it. So God in his kindness let me see that black cell phone on a black car. But from the perspective, not our perspective, just being so grateful to God that I found it, but from the perspective of the person that found the cell phone, did they do the right thing?
I think so.
You think they did the right thing? Okay, any other thoughts on it? They didn't pocket it. They picked it up. They put it on the car that it was right next to, which plausibly is where it came from, which is the truth. Any other thoughts on it?
I don't think it meets the merit of doing everything you can to find the owner.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So what do you think they should have done?
Like you said about the money by the car, they should have taken it and wrote a note on that car. Or tried to figure out by calling maybe their wife on the phone, or if they could unlock it, or just did more to try to find out actually whose it was. Because like you said, it could have not even been that person's phone, and or with it blending in with the car, it could have got ruined anyway.
What do you think, Robin?
Your mother's phone?
Do you think the person did I don't know who the person was, but you think they did the right thing? It was very obvious what happened. The door opened, her phone fell out. Someone walked by, they noticed the phone. It was right by the door of the car, I'm assuming, because that's the only way it fell out. Probably fell it right off her pocketbook when she was leaving the car. I was the driver, was on the passenger side. They picked it up and they put it on the hood of the car.
Yeah, okay, they did. I think they did the right thing.
I don't want to judge not favorably, but since we're talking in a class, I would sort of go in the direction of Danielle. And of course, we have no clue. Maybe they did try. So I'm not talking about the specific person because I have no clue. But if someone finds a phone and then just, they're not pocketing it, they're not stealing it, they're putting it on the most plausible place, the car that probably it fell
Right.
off out of, which it did. The question is, did they try harder or not? I have no clue. Just like, again, with my
Or maybe
daughter's
they
phone.
could have.
How could they try harder? That's my question.
So my question is, just like with my daughter's phone, remember I said before my daughter lost a phone and the person from the notification on the top saw a phone number and called that phone number, and through that phone number was able to get to me. I was able to get to my daughter for her to get back her phone. So I lost my phone once, and someone, I guess, managed to open it up and call me on it, or however, called a contact on it. I don't know. Maybe they did try. I'm not saying they didn't, but I don't know if they tried. I don't know if there was a possibility of figuring out whose it is. Now, again, maybe not. Maybe there was a lock on the phone and they were stuck, and that phone didn't have any of these like roaming notifications. I don't know. But in that scenario, so I'm not judging that individual person who,
Yeah.
thank God, was an honest person and didn't put it in his pocket. As like, my daughter's iPhone is still missing in action. So it was there. Obviously, the person that passed by was an honest person. 100% they were an honest person. But maybe it would have been more appropriate to, instead of just putting it on the hood of the car, to leave a note on the car. If you lost a phone, call me. I found one, and then if it's truly mine, we would have called. We would have described the phone. Oh yeah, this is exactly the phone that I saw. Oh no, it's not my phone. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like maybe he's putting it on the hood of the car, but it's not our phone. It's someone else's phone. Or maybe because it was on the hood of the car, black on black, it would have been so easy for us to drive away, and the phone would have tossed off and wound up in a gutter in New York, as I was sort of scared was happened as I was searching for it.
Well, maybe he should have just put it on the windshield of the car, so
Yeah.
you'd have to see it.
Yeah, that would. I'm sure whoever did it was probably rushing, saw it. Oh my gosh, and just must be from this car. Just put it down and didn't like process that. There's no way we're gonna see that black on black phone on black hood. And obviously, if he had just put it on the windshield, yeah, it would have been a lot easier. But again, who knows? I'm not judging the person at all. At all. I hope this doesn't sound like an incrimination of the person. It wasn't.
Right. No.
I'm just saying, in terms of ourselves, when we find things, if there's the signs, if there's identification, we have to really do everything we can to make sure it gets back to the right owner. Now, you could say here, it was so obvious to him it was ours, but maybe not. Maybe somebody was walking and their phone slipped exactly by the door of our car, and we would see a car, it's not my phone, like I don't know anything about it. So that's why we just have an onus. I'm not at all blaming that person at all. Thank God he was honest. Thank God God helped, and we found the phone after a long time of looking, like a long, long time. And God just helped, and I don't know, somehow I saw that phone, like, oh my gosh. But if we would find the phone, if it was us, not this person, thank you, the person. I'm not at all incriminating the person. But for ourselves, if we would find like a phone, maybe we need to do more than just put it on the closest car. Maybe we need to stop and think, can I figure out whose it is? Is there any, like a lot of time, can I scroll? Am I going to see? Is there anything that would show me? Like, let's say my daughter's phone. Okay, let's say my daughter's stolen phone. Let's say the thieves actually despair and just toss it somewhere by accident. If anyone would open up the phone, it would say, I'm lost or stolen, and please call. So maybe there's something you can do when you're looking at an item like a phone to say, do I have a way of returning this to probably an owner that really needs it? So again, to recap, there's many other laws, but I'm just going to stop at this point. But it is very practical. We lose things all the time. We might find things all the time. If it's ownerless, it's no problem taking it. What would define as ownerless? If the owner has completely despaired of ever getting it back. How can I assume the owner despaired? Only in a situation where there's no signs. So honestly, from the letter of the law, let's go back to Danielle's situation. If you walk on the street and you see a $20 bill, the fact that it's right next to a car does not really give it signs. So definitely, you are totally allowed to pick up the $20 bill and put it in your pocket. And thank God for giving you an extra $20. But you can choose to be beyond the letter of the law and leave a note in the area of the car. If you lost something, give me a call. I might have found something of yours. But letter of the law, if the person despaired, it's ownerless, it's yours. How do we know they despaired? We don't always know, and we might be holding on to things that people have long despaired of. But if there's signs, you never know. But if there's no signs, we can assume safely despair. But just like Danielle's idea of leaving the note by the car of the $20 bill, or like the story I told you from the Talmud of the person who raised the chickens that eventually became a herd of goats, in something like finding lost objects, you can always go beyond the letter of the law. And even if God's not requiring you to guard this and wait, maybe an owner will show up, you always can choose to do so and just be even more careful. Or like Dixie's pious care, when she finds money, no way of returning it to someone, she says, okay, this isn't mine, this is mine to give to charity. That's a beautiful custom of, like, not required by the law, but a beautiful custom that expresses, God, I came from you and I'm giving it back.